Hey, I've just been sitting here in my space watching the minutes go by waiting to start. I haven't always been sitting here. I've been scrambling most of the time getting everything ready just to make sure I have everything. But for the last few minutes, I decided to just sit and reflect and kind of think about what we're going to be learning tonight. So I'm going to wait for a few of you to hop on here just like I normally do. So as you come on, say hi. And, oh good, Dale, we got comments starting to pop up right away. I can see, makes me happy. Yeah, tonight's going to be a lot of fun. So I'll wait for just a couple minutes, let you guys hop on. If you are watching live, hello. And if you're going to watch the replay later, then you can chill with us for a minute, or you can fast forward and get to the good part. So, all right, got Steph, Shauna, Christy, Amanda, Judy, Valerie, sweet. All right. Hi, Gina. I'm so glad you guys are here tonight on a Friday night. It's a weekend. Thanks for spending your weekend with me. So after our workshop last night, I realized a couple of things, and I wanted to go over them. Thank you. Thanks, Amanda. I love this shirt. I got this in Bryce. If you haven't been to any of the national parks in southern Utah, you need to go because they're amazing. But I got this in Bryce Canyon National Park, and I really loved it. I thought it was so cool. Wonder Woman. I was like, yes. And it was funny because a fellow retailer, her name is Holly Klovig. Some of you may know her. She's very talented in cabinet painting and furniture and everything. But she said that Bryce Canyon National Park was named after her great-great-great-great-grandfather, Bryce. I thought that was so cool. So anyways, Bryce Canyon is one of my favorites. It's absolutely beautiful. It's on your list. Good deal. Hi, Judith. How we doing? Hey, Jamie. All right, so we've got about 20 of you. We'll get started. So back to what I was saying before. So on our class last night, there was two things that I didn't go over, and I realized after I ended the live, and I thought I'd planned on adding it into the live tonight, but I think I'm just going to do a separate segment. And one of those things is, okay, yeah, I wrote them down. One of those things is going over top coats. So how do I seal this finish once I've created it, right? And the answer can be kind of complex because there's lots of different options, and depending on how you want it to look, you may use two different sealants. And so I thought it would be better if I did either a recorded tutorial or sat down and did a live, and I just went strictly over sealing your piece with you. And I feel like that will be more beneficial than if I just trying to squeeze it in tonight while I'm teaching this finish. So plan on that. Let me know if you would rather have a live video doing that where you can ask questions and interact, or if you would rather have just a recorded tutorial for the top coat segment. And then the other thing, thanks Janet, they've lasted 2 days. We're on a streak. And then the last thing I wanted to go over is, no, I got two more things. No, yep. Okay, I just want to make sure I'm on the right place. Okay, so I am going to do a styling, staging, photographing, and editing segment in this class because I want all of you to be able to feel really good about the pictures you take, and I want you to take good pictures of your work. I think it's important to do that. And so I am going to give you a little course on that and help you out with some of my favorite apps for editing and things like that. And that probably, a lot of that will be recorded, but I do want to do the staging segment live so that we can interact and you guys can look at the options that I have and tell me what you think you might like or whatever. So I think that might be kind of fun. So plan on that for those segments. As far as the top coats, let me know if you want it live or recorded. And the other one will be both. And then, oh, and the other last thing that I just wanted to mention, Facebook has set up a group messaging feature automatically when you have a learning group now, and it will send out an alert like welcome to the group or something like that. And I don't know how to change that. It's kind of just built into the new groups. So I like If it's really, really, really important, then I'm going to email you or call you. If it's just something that, to be aware of, I might send something in the group. I'm not going to message very often. And if you are not a group messenger, you don't like it, you don't want to be a part of it, you can leave it. That's totally fine. You're not going to miss anything super important. So that's totally up to you. All right. Okay, cool. Let's get started. Oh, good. I'm so glad. Okay, so with that, we will start. Tonight we are going to be doing our Smoldering Raku finish. Okay, so this is our final look. This is the same finish that I did on the dresser that I kept in my room, and I brought a drawer with me to show you the drawer, to show you how this is like a condensed version of the entire dresser, right? But I'm going to show you one of the drawers that's about this section here so that you can kind of visualize it here right in front of you on the screen, okay? This is what we're doing. I'm going to set this one aside. I'm going to show you the drawer. It's a big drawer. I didn't plan this out very well. Okay, so this is the drawer. You can see it doesn't have near as much white as in the board that I painted because I've covered more of it with the copper and the other colors. But you can leave as much, so you can kind of see it glow, or as little as you want. All right, so this kind of gives you an idea of that white area being a little bit more covered. Okay, this is with the satin varnish top coat over the top. All right. Okay, I'll set that aside. Now you know what our goal is. We can get started. Okay, so I have my first board ready, and instead of mixing up the salt wash, I thought I would skip this step because I've mixed a lot of salt wash in front of you, and I feel like you have probably the hang of that by now. So to start out, if you want to prep your dresser or piece, however you're going to prep it, and you can prime it. If it needs to be primed, you can go ahead and prime. I just laid a little bit down on this board to show you, but this is over top of another sample board, and I just used the Wiesel Gray primer just to prep that side, okay? I mixed salt wash and carbon together, and I created a frosting-like consistency, and I have it right here. So that's where we're going to start today, is with our base already mixed. You could use carbon or black, and I just sealed it. I mixed it probably 45 minutes ago, so I put this on it in just a damp cloth to hopefully keep that moisture in. Yeah, it's dried just a little bit. I didn't have an airtight container to put it in. That would have been better, but this is fine. Okay, so this is about the consistency you want, just like frosting out of a can, okay? And we are going to lay it down, but then we're going to apply two different textures to this piece. So similar to how we did the wishing rock wall, we had a different texture on the bottom, and then we had a different texture on top. That's kind of what I'm going for here. And my thoughts are, think of like the base of a pot, okay? And how it sometimes has like those brush marks around it on the base, and then it has some colors or designs that go up from there. So that's what we're going to create, is some brush strokes that go across here and some texture that comes up here to give the look of pottery. And it looks really cool on a dresser too. So, okay, so go ahead and you're just going to spread this mixture onto your piece. Just get it on there. And if you are working on a large piece, you probably want to work in smaller sections so that your salt wash mixture doesn't dry out on you as you're going along. Now, you don't have to completely cover the top part if you don't want to. Similar to last night, you can add a little bit of texture in sporadic places, and then you can paint the color in between if you don't want to put that thick salt wash layer over top of everything. That's totally an option. However, you do want that salt wash mixture at least completely covering like the bottom, I would say the bottom third or the bottom fourth of your piece right here. So when you add those brush marks to it, they are very textured and profound, and then up here you can have sporadic texture if you decide to do that. Hi Suzanne, how are we doing? Okay, so I'll set this aside. And now we're going to add some texture. So you're going to need 2 items. The first one is just a Klingon brush. Okay, so where you've added your texture up top, I'm just going to choose spots and kind of, let's put this down just a little bit. There we go. And just texture that top a little bit. If there's some thicker spots with lines in it, that's okay. I'm cool with that. There we go. Okay, so that's about what you want the top half to look like. Okay, just give it some texture. Just give it a little bit of texture. And then our bottom quarter, we're going to use our dollar store brush. If you don't have a brush like this, you could use, well, I'm just looking over, like I have a hair clip over there that has like a comb shape. You could use like a comb. You could use a brush, but I kind of like the way this looks. So anything similar to this. And then you can take it and you're just going to make sure that your salt wash is wet, and you're going to swipe right. You're going to broom it, okay? And you're just going to do a swipe all the way across. Okay, so now you have that texture that looks like it's going horizontal, and then you have some vertical sporadic texture. Okay, so that's going to make your base look like a pot. Now you'll know the consistency is right when, if you look closely, can you see there's little spots like right there and a few in here that look like, it looks like clay and it's balled up a little bit or has little nubs or something? That's good. That's the good stuff. Leave it on there because it looks really cool once you start adding all of your colors and your paint. So any little nubs or bumps, that's the good stuff. Okay? All right, so I'm going to set this aside. And then the last thing I'm going to do to add texture, because we always add texture and then we build off of that texture. So the base is all about just layering that just right, okay? So we've got, I'm going to turn this so it's facing you guys so that makes more sense to you. We've got our bottom here brushed, our texture top here, and now we're going to add some glass bead gel, okay? Glass bead gel, we worked with it a little bit in our first class with the textures, but this is really, really cool stuff. And if you have used it, let me know, and let me know how you like it. But it basically has little tiny glass beads in it, and the gel is white, but it will dry clear, okay? So I think in the last video, we just applied it clear, but this time I'm gonna mix it. I originally mixed this when I did this dresser with like a sapphire because I wanted to be able to distress and have some of that sapphire come through. But I found that it's better and I get more of a 3D effect if I mix it with the same color as my base color, so carbon or black, something like that, okay? And then I'm going to get a lot better color underneath. So you just take your glass bead gel. Okay, you don't need much. This is going to be plenty for what I'm working on. I always save these little tops and put them on just to kind of keep it from drying out. Okay, and then I'm just going to use a little bit of our carbon and mix that together. If you watch the rock wall tutorial, I kind of did the same thing with the glass beads on the rock wall. Kim, are you talking about the glass bead gel, or are you talking about the salt wash and paint mixture? I've never had an issue with either one on a vertical surface. So maybe, I guess maybe it would be how thick you put it on. I don't know. I'll wait for your answer first. Okay. All right. So now I've got it all mixed together. Okay. And I'm just going to put it in random spots, just like on this side. All right. So we'll put a little bit here. I kind of just pull out from it a little bit so it doesn't look like a blob. You don't need a lot of glass bead gel, and it's okay. I usually don't put much down here where I've broomed it, but it's okay if you want to put a little bit of glass bead gel down there at the bottom. Okay, so the glass bead gel, I don't know. I use it on dressers all the time, and I've never had it not stay in place. It does take a while to dry, and it will change color when it dries. So if you're not mixing it with paint, it's going to look white and it will dry clear. If you are, just wait until it's completely dry. It'll be a little bit sticky, but it takes time. But I've never had it not stick on a vertical surface or fall off. If you're in a very humid climate, then maybe that would happen. And I would say to get less humid, get in an environment that's less humid. All right. Okay, so that's about where we want to be. You can even use less glass bead gel than that. You don't need a lot, but you want to put it in areas where maybe it's a little bit flatter. The piece you're working on is a little bit flatter. It'll add a little bit of texture and interest to those flat sections. I like to put it usually around the corner edges of the drawer so they almost look a little bit thicker, or in the inlay more than just on the flat surfaces. So that's kind of where I tend to put it. Okay. Pull out my bags because we're about ready to use them. All right, so next we want to start adding in our base color. So this is similar to what we did in our fiery finish. We do a dark base and then we start building up our colors. But our colors are going to be a little bit different. So we're going to start with sapphire, native clay, and bone. And you can use, especially for the bone, you can use any white. So if you want it more white, you can use like a snow owl. If you want more creamy tones, you could use an ivory or a cream, restoration even, something like that. That's another Wise-Owl color if you're not familiar with. If I feel like I'm speaking gibberish, I'm referring to Wise-Owl colors. So any color in that range, you want it to be some type of a white range. I would stay away from something with a yellow undertone though, because that'll throw off your colors a little bit more than you want to. Okay, so I'm going to start with, move these to the side. Okay, so I'm going to start with our bone first. And the bone is going to go up towards the top. So our broomed area down here, we want it to stay really pretty dark. And then the top is where we start to bring in that light and warmth. So this about right here, I would say, is where I would add my bone color. And I'm just going to use this brush since it's sitting out. Okay. And we're just going to do the same, kind of the same application we did on the fiery finish, just laying down that base, stippling it in. Okay, I'm going right over top of the glass beads, that's fine. But once I've got it stippled in, I'm just using whatever paint's left on my brush, and we're just blending, okay? The smoldering finish has a softer feel. It doesn't have any harsh waves or really any harsh lines. It's very smooth. It's supposed to be like it's smoldering, right? So you think of something smoldering, you think of like the black smoke coming up or something kind of smoldering, simmering. It's just slowly metalling and melting together, okay? So basically what I'm doing is I'm creating a highlight. It's going to give dimension to my piece. Okay, by adding that white, that bright undertone. Okay, now we are going to add native clay. I'm going to put my brush in a little bag here. I'm glad, welcome Marshall, I'm glad you're here. Marshall and I survived a night in the downtown streets of Indiana together. We were really dumb. But we did call an Uber and he saved the day, so we made it back. Funny. Okay, so we've got native clay. Who's had native clay? Have you guys tried it? I've had a few messages from some of you that tried it. I love it. So pretty. Okay, I'm going to use, I think this is an 045 Klingon brush. It's really long and it has a good size base for the bristles. Okay, and I'm just going to put enough on there that it will come off onto, look at that, I'm dipping my elbow into the other side of this, it's too wet. All right, so I'm just putting enough on that I know it will come off. If I need to add more, I can, or I can hold back. But I am going to apply the native clay above and below our highlighted area, okay? And really, I'm just barely touching the edge where it meets. And I'm going down just a tiny bit into our broomed area. So not much, but just a tiny bit. What this is going to do with our native clay is going to create a little bit of a base where we can add some rust later. And then this edge is going to look like a smoked out, burned, charred piece. And then it will slowly look a little bit rusted, and then we'll come up into the coppers and that. So this is creating that base for that rust area, or the charred areas that we're going to create later. All right. Okay, and then we'll start up here. Oh, I'm so glad. Yay! And then we're going to do the same up top. Okay, and I'm not going all the way to the top. I'm going to kind of leave some up there. This would be, and I just fade it a little bit into the top. Okay, just letting the texture pick up whatever's left on my brush up here. Because on the piece that I did, it faded up, and then I had the smoked edges on my top and a stained top. But you could do a stained top, you could do a black top, you could keep going and kind of bring this up over the top if you want. But this would be where I would start to blend that into whatever I decided to do with the top of my dresser. Okay. Okay. Now we want to create a little bit of flow. We're not doing a ton of flow yet, but we want to create a little bit of flow. Now this is smoldering smoking, so it's going to be much softer and much more whirly. Okay, so we're doing the same, kind of oval circle that we did before in our other piece. And if I want, a little bit more, I always say cover a little bit less, and then you can always add more later. But I know I want a little bit more. So I'm just going to apply it a little heavier and a little farther down, and then go ahead and fade that out. I can give you guys ideas for the tops of your pieces as well. If you're struggling, I think it would be really cool to do this broomed texture over the top. That would be super cool. And then add like a little bit of copper dry brush. Ooh, yeah. Now we're talking. Okay, so that's pretty good. That's about where I want it to be. If you're doing a large piece, your dresser is basically going to look like it has stripes on it, kind of. But then they kind of just softly blend into each other. Okay, but from a distance, it's going to look more like that. That's normal, okay? Now let's grab out a little bit of sapphire. Put my brush in here. I'm actually just going to use a community brush bag. The community brush bag is when they all go into the same bag because I don't want to use any more baggies. Okay, and we'll grab a little bit of sapphire. I'm just going to use an F30 Klingon brush. I've used mine a lot, so it's kind of frayed out a bit, but that's the F30. And remember, this color is very, very intense. The sapphire is very intense, so you don't need very much. Okay. Now I'm just going to pick a few places to place the sapphire. So probably a little bit along this bottom edge where we're kind of fading into that dark. And see, there's quite a bit on my brush. So I don't want to keep going there because I'm going to put too much down. So I'm going to come up over here Okay, and I'm going to come up maybe just a little here. Okay, and then I'm going to offload my brush. Oh, that would be cool. A blue metallic top. Okay, so I'm just wiping off any excess because I've got plenty. That's pretty good. If your brush starts looking like that, that's about what you want for a good dry brush, okay? And now I'm going to stipple first because I don't know how wet this is, and if I just pull it through, I'm going to get harsh lines. So always kind of stipple first to test out how dry it is, and then kind of work around it. Okay, that's pretty much all dry there. And there, and I'll do the same here, and then I'll go back over them. Okay. Now I can kind of just blend that out. This one. These are going to kind of be hidden undertones. So if I don't like the way that this is fitting, don't worry about it. You're going to cover a lot of that up. So don't pick apart or assess every single step. Don't do it. You'll make yourself miserable. Do the step and move on to the next one. Because I could spend hours just doing this. Just do it and move on. And then as you go, you'll find out what colors you like more of and what you like less of. And then you can create it exactly how you're seeing it in your mind. Okay? All right. So we've got a few pops of that bright color going on, that sapphire. Okay. So that's where we should be now. When I did my dresser, I had a big, giant dresser that looked just like this, but with stripes, basically stripes, okay? And that took me a day, and then I walked away from it, and I came back the next day. So that's always a good breaking point if you're doing a finish like this. Okay. So here we are. You can see on my original board, I didn't blend down as much. I left this really kind of brighter white. And so I'm going to read this comment real quick. Okay, so just really quick, referring back to the glass bead gel. If you are in a very humid environment, maybe take your piece inside or just the drawers or something and let it dry. So because it does take so long to dry. And if it's moving at all and you can't tip your piece on its back, if that's a problem and you can't tip your piece on its back, can you take the drawers out and try that? Or hold them, put it on, and then immediately hit it with a hair dryer to kind of let it gel up a little bit and hold in place. That's some options for you to try that might be helpful with the glass bead gel if you have any of those issues. Okay, so I can add in some more of my native clay and kind of blend down into this if I want to, but I'm going to just wait and I'll blend down into it after I do these next couple steps. Okay, so now we're going to add some iron oxide. Let's see. Sorry, I wrote these down on the back of this and I had to change it. Yeah, okay. Okay, yes, that's right. Okay, so we're going to add the iron oxide first. Sorry, I had to change the way I was doing it twice. Sometimes when I paint a piece and then I go to teach it in a class, I have to change the way that the order in which I painted it or the way I did it because I don't want to repeat steps. And I want to be able to give you the information you need to complete the finish without a bunch of extras in there if possible. So sometimes it takes me a minute to rethink the way I'm going to teach it, but I try to make it as easy as I can for you that way. Okay, so I've got my iron oxide. And let's see, we're going to use this brush. And then the copper. So the patina effect paste. This is brass. I keep calling it copper because it is copper, but the one, if you got the kit, or if you're looking for it, it is the patina effects paste and it's the brass. Okay, and I'm going to grab a brush for that as well. Okay, so we don't need much iron oxide. We're just kind of playing off that rust. And so we're going to add a little bit just around our edges here. And this is just kind of fading that native clay into our carbon. And then I'm going to come up here and kind of do the same. This as well will have some of those drips, you know, some almost looks like it was splashed going down or something like that. Raku pottery has those. So I'm going to pull that. And you see that, how it kind of pulls down and creates almost like a dripped. Do that here and there in a few places, because that kind of just helps give it that more realistic feel. Okay, and then I'm just going to take my brush and kind of pull up into that white. And I'm really just going to start letting that texture pick it up. So the drier your brush, the less color you're going to lay down. So you're going to pick up more texture, and you're not going to paint in between the texture, so you're muddying it. If you get things wet and you try and do this with a wet brush, you're going to paint the whole thing, and you're not going to see all that texture and that depth. So it's really important that your brush is dry when doing this part. Okay, a little bit more. And I'm just kind of just lightly going over the top, just to almost give it that light rusted kind of feel. This is a good base for the copper as well, because the copper will kind of sit over top of that iron oxide, and you'll see the edges of the rusty iron oxide and then the bright copper as well. Hi, Cynthia. I'm glad you're here. Okay. Okay. I'll even pull it down just a little bit onto our brushed areas, and I'll let this texture pick it up a little bit. You'll start to see this one doesn't have as many balls in the texture, like the little tiny nubs, but you'll see it more in the other ones, okay? So you see how we're starting to really darken that, but still let some of that shine through. You could even use, instead of bone, you could use like a really pale sage green. You could use a really pale blue. You could put refurbished gentleman here if you want to. You won't have as much pop or dimension right there, but you can substitute a color if you don't want any of that kind of whiter tone in there, okay? All right, so we're getting pretty good on our rust. We can still see our native clay. It's so light that you can still see the native clay underneath. When I seal this, that's going to pop even more, so I'll see the colors underneath a little bit more as well. All right, so now we're going to add some copper. Yes, Cynthia. She said she Googled Raku, and there's so many different designs and styles. There really, really is. And it's just endless. The inspiration is endless. And I even believe that within Raku pottery, there's probably a style of Raku pottery for every style that people decorate and design with, I think, which is pretty cool. Okay, so we're going to grab our patina effects paste in the brass, or your copper. And remember, this is super bright. Okay, so we just want to start adding a little bit, and really look here. Do you see how this almost looks like it's falling, like it's rain, like it's misting the copper? That's the good stuff. That's what you want. You want those little kind of misting feelings, because that's what it does when it's cooking. Okay, so we're gonna go right here. And the same thing, we're kind of just dabbing away. I'm going to connect to this other side here. And then I'm just going to kind of dry brush and pull some on the texture. Maybe leave a little bit on my brush. And then I'm going to pull down so we can create some of that misty, raining feel. Okay, and let's pull it up. We don't want to cover all the blue. Like, that blue's yummy. You want those intense colors behind it. They're so good. Okay, now let's do some on the bottom. See how this has both? I'll do some on the bottom too. Okay, we can bring a little bit up into our white, but I don't want to completely cover it. See how it's just hitting the texture, but you can still see that white behind it? Yeah, it kind of does look like a lake. Yeah, I thought that actually once. It almost looks like little ocean waves. Ooh. Yeah, I usually pull just a little bit down. And then at the end, we're going to go back over and smoke it out, just like we did on the other piece. So if I feel like I pulled too much gold down, I can go and smoke it out with our black or our carbon, like we did before. Okay. It's good to do some places a little bit more. But see how I'm being like very sporadic, and then I'm just kind of dry brushing to bring it together. Okay, all right. I feel like that's looking pretty good. Okay, so we've got some deep and dark, and we've got some copper. So right now, it's like we have all this cool stuff underneath, and we just kind of have some copper. And the copper looks really cool, but we want the copper to have dimension, just like the other parts have dimension. Okay, so we're going to add a little bit of color in, and then we're going to start smoking it. All right, smoke your Raku, people. Okay, so let's add in some of this. This is raspberry beret that we're going to use, and we're going to add it on this side. I like adding the raspberry beret because I feel like it really gives it some warmth and dimension, and it does not feel or look pink. When you're looking at these, yes, it really does look pink, but on the dresser in my room, I hardly even notice the pink. I'll just show you one more time. See how there's just a tiny bit down there in the corners? You know, you're not really paying attention to that, but it adds a little bit of warmth. Okay, so let's add that into our piece now. The Great Pottery Showdown. I didn't even know that was a thing. That's freaking cool. I want to watch that. I like shows like that. Documentaries, whodunits, action, comedy. I don't really like love stories that much. and I don't like scary movies. I did watch Stranger Things. That's my limit. I can't get over them. I'm like in the shower looking behind the shower curtain, scared. Okay, so we've got our raspberry beret here. There it is. And you're just going to need just a little bit. I want the board. I know, I was thinking of, I don't know. I'm going to do something cool with them. I saved my favorite boards from the last class, and I painted over a few of the other ones. Okay, so for our raspberry beret, I'm going to go ahead and use this because I'm going to use it later on. So this, it looks like a broken brush. It's not. It's an angled brush, so it's actually made that way. These are awesome for reaching into corners or tight places, and they're also great for just adding a tiny bit of paint onto your piece. Okay, so we are going to take, first native clay. Okay, and we're going to go back over some of our copper parts with the native clay. By layering this, I know we already layered it once. By layering it over it again, we'll still see the bright copper, but there'll be parts that look a little bit rusted or smoked or toned down. So that's the benefit to taking the native clay over the top again and just lightly blending that in, because it will make you have some smoky copper parts, and then you've got your bright, intense parts. If you look at Raku pottery closely, you'll see that the colors, when it's close to touching a dark color or a burn part, they're more way muted and toned, and then all of a sudden they get super vibrant, whether it's a metallic or it's one of the matte colors, okay? So it kind of has that same, where it kind of just really tones down our copper. So we're gonna take our native clay, and I'm gonna do a little bit right here. That way, seeing how I'm pulling it down, kind of give it that misty feeling. We'll tone it down just a little there. A little bit here. And we're starting to give it a little bit of flow. Like if I went all the way across, I'd come here, I'd fill in more of this, come down, bring it up a little bit. Okay. So I'm just brushing whatever's left on my brush and just blending it out until my brush is like totally empty. Okay. This way we still have some really shiny copper parts, but then we have some dull parts. Yeah, I know, I've stared at them, I thought maybe I could make some kind of big art piece or something with all of them. I don't know. The problem is there's too many ideas to do all of them. That's the problem. Okay. Now we're going to do our raspberry beret. I love raspberry beret. It is such a good color. I love Rocksteady. It's a really great hot pink, but raspberry beret has that I don't know, raspberry beretness. It just has like a little bit deeper tone to it, a little bit more rich, which I really like. Okay, so take your little brush. Now I'm mostly going to be placing my raspberry beret, see these intents, on my texture spots, because then when I use my palette knife to go over those texture spots, I'm going to get that raspberry beret underneath, a little bit of the copper to the side, and my bright pop of metallics over that texture, and it's going to be perfect. So we're going to add in some warmth. So let's start up here. And I'm just kind of following my little glass beads. Maybe just trail off a little bit there. A little bit. Okay. And I feel like a little bit here. Let's touch up our brush a little bit. Boop. And you notice sometimes I'm like, okay, I'm just going to unload whatever's left right here because it feels like it needs a little warmth. That's basically what I'm doing. I don't really have much on my brush at all. I just think it needs like a little bit of warmth or something. Okay. So I'm not using much. And then I like to just take my brush and kind of pull it down. Kind of same thing, just create that misty feeling. I'm trying to be as gentle as I can with this brush. This brush really isn't made to do what I'm doing with it right now, but this is what I do with all my brushes, and they still are kicking. That's good. Okay. Okay, I like that. I feel like that has some earthy, like it's got a good base. It's grounded. It has some copper. But then we've got some of this color or these burnt, smoked out areas we're going to create. Okay. Yes, Cynthia, I will compare the boards for sure. I can do that. It's sitting right over next to me, so yes, I can do that. Okay. So now that we've got those on it, I know this looks a little bit lighter just because I dry brushed a little more native clay, but I'm going to leave it because I think it's good for you all to see, you know, the difference in if you cover it more or if you cover it less. So that's kind of up to you what you want to do as far as that. Maybe you want it mostly really light with just a little color. You know, there's a lot of things that you could create with this. Okay, so these boards, I'll tell you guys real quick. These boards that I get, they are masonite. Those are my notes behind it. They're masonite boards. Canvas boards are kind of expensive unless you can get them from the thrift store, but then still you're paying, I don't know, $2 or $3, and they're going to be all different sizes. And I like that these are just nice and flat, and they're hard and sturdy. So I just buy a board of masonite from Home Depot or Lowe's, whatever. They're like they're more expensive than they used to be. I think they maybe like $24, $26. They used to be like $13. Anyway, and then I just had them cut. I just calculated how many would fit. I think 20 fit on pretty well, 19 or 20. And then I just told them the measurements, and I just had them cut it there right there for me. And then I took it home, and it was really easy. So they'll cut them for you, or if you cut them, want to take them home and cut them. I just thought since he was there, I'd have him cut them. So that's where I get my boards from. And then I think it ended up costing me like $1 a board, which is awesome. Perfect. Okay. So now we are going to add on our smoke. We're going to give some smolder over here. All right. So we can use, I'm going to pull out some black, and I'm going to pull out a little bit of chocolate. And we are going to use both of those. Cynthia, I'm going to grab this board right now and set it behind me, but if I forget to show you and compare, just remind me. Sometimes I forget things. Okay. Oh my gosh, okay, it took me a minute. I get what you're saying. Like, is that it's the song. That was actually a really good joke. I like that. I was a little bit late to the party, but I do appreciate it. That's like my husband. He always tells dad jokes. That was a good one. I liked it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of, sometimes I go back and forth with these. So this part takes a little bit of time because you want it to be smoky and almost like a little bit sultry, I feel like. A little bit smoky and a little bit sultry. So I will go back and forth between the black and the chocolate until I kind of feel like I have a good smoke over top. So basically, I'm going to show you, we are going to be going into this, okay? See how this feels much more moody and it's a little bit darker? We're going to do that. So we're taking this brighter tones here and we're going to darken it up. This will also mute out some of your brighter like raspberry beret tones and things like that, so that will cover up some of that pink. So that's why I say don't stress it. It's not going to turn your dresser pink. So let's go ahead and start with chocolate. Put a little bit on my brush. I'm going to offload it just a little bit. Okay. And then we will start adding our little bit of smoke. Okay. So I'm going to start on the areas that have texture. Okay. Now I don't want to completely cover up my copper, right? So this is where you're going to be very gentle. You're going to take your time and you're not going to be in a rush to do this part. If you feel rushed, stop painting, go do something else, come back to it. If you have to get it done that night, at least take a break and walk away for a while. Okay? Because you want to have time to kind of smoke this out. Now, also another thing that I will say is you're going to do a lot of back and forth here. Okay, so I've got my layer there. I may feel like that's too dark, and so I'm going to take a little more copper over the top. All right, but I want this to be pretty much on top. The smoke needs to be on top of the copper, so that's why I'm layering it this way. Okay, pull a little bit down, and we're just going to kind of gently, there's hardly any in my brush, I'm just gently brushing up this base, just to kind of darken that transition a little bit. Don't worry, we're going to come back in with our palette knife. We're going to add some copper over the top of that will pop. You see how that kind of starts to darken that transition a little bit? Especially over my blue, because we want it to be like a faded, settled blue. Here. So this is where it starts to take a little bit more time to start to see that change. But it will definitely start to pick up your texture. Okay, and go up just a little bit more over our raspberry beret. Okay, so I'm letting those edges show around it, and I'm kind of just throw in that chocolate in between, and then I'm just gonna dry brush that out, okay? So this will start to give that appearance. Now it looks like a little bit splotchy, right? Because I've got texture here and texture there. Once I get my palette knife out in the end, and we use that, it's not going to look so divided. Okay, and there's some areas where you're just going to want to stipple it. Just leave that cool little bit of texture there and don't blend it out. So some areas you blend, some areas you're just going to kind of okay. And if your brush makes a weird mark, if you don't like it, don't be like, oh, I have to fix that. I don't like the way that looks. Just keep going. Because if you take any rock, any natural thing in existence, nothing's perfect ever. And everything is unique and individual. And there's some crazy weird lines on rocks and leaves and dirt. And even in the Raku pottery, it's unpredictable. You don't know exactly what it's going to do. Okay, so don't sit there and be like, I don't like that mark. Don't do stuff like that. Just let it go. Move on. If you really still hate the mark later on, then you can take your palette knife and kind of go over it and add a little bit of pop over top of that. Okay, now let's add a little bit of black smolder. I'm going to use the same brush. Okay, see how this is starting to look a little less colorful and more dark and smoldery, smoky, sultry, all those good things. I know everyone's going to be singing Raspberry Beret, which is an awesome song, by the way. I think I actually got it out and played it for my kids when the color came out because they didn't know it. Okay, so I am very, very, very lightly dry brushing, okay, over my texture. And then come back in with a little stipple. Okay, we're just kind of darkening this up. We're getting that nice smoldery, schmelty feel. Okay, and you know what? Let's say I'm at this point and I'm like, oh, that's too much white. I don't like that much white. Guess what? It's really easy to take a color. Usually I will go for a copper. Just grab your copper. Boop, a little bit in there. Hardly need any. Okay, and then I'm going to come right over it. Okay, there we go. And now I have less white peeking through over there. And a little more of that bright copper. Okay, so this is nice too because then I have that bright copper and I have that dark smoldering copper tone. Kind of like in the fiery Raku we did yesterday, how we had the two different sheens. I'm going to add just a little bit more here. Okay, so you can kind of play around with that, see what you like. I'll also kind of take my brush and pull it over a little bit more. Just let those brush lines at the base really start to pick up that cool copper. Isn't that awesome? It looks so cool. Okay, so see how we're going from pink to way toned down. All right, now we are ready to move on to our next step. Isn't it fun? Dude, it's so fun when you do a new finish and then you're like, oh, that's awesome. Like, that's freaking awesome. You can't wait to show people. That's a fun feeling. Like, it's fun. And it's fun when things work out. And you know what? It's good when they don't work out because then that's how you learn the good stuff. It's true. Okay. So this is where we are at now. Oh, that's upside down. This is where we're at now. Okay. We've got our brushed base, our copper, a little bit of those undertones. We are going to take it from this, which is very beautiful, and we're going to take it to this. All right. And like I said, I've got more white in here. If you don't like that white, then you just add a little bit more copper and a little bit more of your native clay down there. Okay. So let's do this part. Now, I'm going to show you why it looks like there's a crackle to it. This is not a product that I wrote down, partly because I forgot that I had used it on my dresser until I was preparing for this class. But I'm going to show you how I did this and why I added the crackle into it. And I'll give you the information you need if you want to do it, or if you don't want to buy a stamp, then you could do it by hand with a small brush if you want to add a little bit of crackle. I like the crackle because it felt very natural to pottery to me, and I wanted to add a little bit of a different element and not texture. And I also wanted to tie into the top of my dresser. So the top of my dresser I stripped down and stained in a white pickling stain. I took carbon on the edges and I kind of just smoked out the edges and blended it so they looked like they were burned or charred, and then I took the stamp over the top sporadically so it looked like it was crackled, and then I decided to tie it into my finish a little bit. So I'm going to show you that. This is what I used. It's redesigned with Prima, and it's one of their clear clean stamps. And this one is called Imperial Crackle. So it actually has two different stamps that come in it. And this is an optional step too. You do not have to do this if you don't want to. It doesn't make or break it. It's just kind of a cool extra thing that I did. Now I used the ink when I stamped it. You can put a little bit of paint onto it and stamp with that. If you want to do it with the ink, there's two different kinds of ink that Prima carries, and probably most ink that if you're going to look at getting ink, this is what you want to look for. Okay, so these are what, that's upside down for you. These are what they look like from Redesign with Prima. This one says semi-permanent ink. Wherever it says that, semi-permanent ink, it's going to come off. When you apply your top coat, you're going to pull that off, okay? Do not use semi-permanent ink stamp ever on your furniture. Even when you spray, sometimes it won't stay, okay? Make sure that it says that it is permanent, and right here it says permanent ink. So whatever ink you use, if that's what you're going to use, make sure it's permanent. Okay, so I don't know how much is left in here. Hopefully we have enough to do this stamp, but I just took it on there and applied the ink. It dries really fast and it will not come off even like with an alcohol wipe or anything. So keep that in mind when you use it. I actually got some on my old table and I couldn't get it off. I had to sand it off. Okay, so just like this. And then I just chose a few little areas in my white space to add it. So I just kind of hit it a little bit, just a little bit of crackle here and there to kind of give it that, you know, crackled look. Okay. If you don't want to do that, another way to do that would be you could take like aluminum foil and scrunch it up so it had kind of like a crackled feel on it, and then just put some ink on that and press it down, or a little bit of paint and just lightly kind of touch it. Then that will leave a cool crackle. You can use an artist brush with a flat, firm edge, and then you could take it and you can kind of just, you know, use the edge of the brush to create your own crackle. I would say it's kind of like a desert crackle look. So if you want to do your own, you could just Google a desert crackle image, and then you can kind of follow it along with a paintbrush or something if you want to do that without the stamp. If you want to get the stamp, it's cool. And I think Canterbury has them with the link that I had in the class. Okay, so now we will move on. Okay, so this is where you're going to want a few things. We're going to do two different techniques on this part. You're going to want a mister, a spray bottle. This is just a mister that I got off Amazon. Any type, you can find them under hair misters. You can find them at like Sally's or the salon. But they just give a nice mist, and they're really easy to use while painting and to control with. So you can grab one of these, or You can use a spray bottle from the dollar store even if you wanted to. Okay, and then with that, we are going to drip 2 colors. All right, and that's Raspberry Beret and our deep turquoise. Okay, now what this is going to do is it's going to create a very, very light wash that goes down. I'll show you, and then it's also going to create a little bit of a patina effect with the deep turquoise. So deep turquoise is like the same color as the verdigris glaze was that Wiesel used to carry. You can use deep turquoise instead. So it's a great vibrant patina. All right. And then I'll have some paper towels handy. If you're doing this on a large piece of furniture, then throw down a canvas cloth or tarp or something like that, because it will drip all the way down your dresser onto your concrete or floor below. And you're just going to kind of let it drip. Okay. So with our 2 colors, I'm going to start with Raspberry Beret. And we're going to use our little brush again. Okay. You hardly need any for this. Now we're going to apply it to areas that have a lot of texture. Okay, so we're going to put it in here, and then we're going to spray it, and it will give us this effect. Like there's little bits that are sticking, and then there's kind of like this faded wash that goes down. Yes, you could use Mermaid Kiss instead of deep turquoise for sure. Yeah, Mermaid Kiss is a little bit lighter, but yeah, you can. Or you could use the patina glaze. It'd be a little bit lighter. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to put it right here. Okay. Okay, and then we're going to spray it. So this is going to create that look that is very natural. It's like a very natural weathered look. Then I can just lightly kind of mist it. If I don't want that much in a certain area. The only thing that you need to make sure of is that your paint that you've already placed on there is completely dry before you do this, because you don't want to drip your paint. Okay. This should be just a very, very small amount. You want just a little tiny bit of this just to kind of catch your eye from the side, okay? It just barely catches your eye when it dries. It dries a little bit darker. The Raspberry Beret is a great color for this because it's darker than the Rocksteady, so it gives more of like that sultry, a romantic feel, I guess. Okay, and then let's add just a little bit right in here. I will also add a little bit of this, like if there's going to be hardware right here, I'll add a little bit of the Raspberry Beret below the hardware, and I'll kind of just drip it. So when the hardware goes on, it warms up where that is a little bit. I like the look of that. Okay. And if you feel like it's going to be too much over top of your white area or your lighter area, just spray it back a little bit. And then wait for it to dry completely before you apply any more, because it will dry darker and not be as intense. And so you might want to add more, or you might be like, okay, that's plenty for me. All right. And then if you don't want any of that pink down there, it's really going to be very hard to notice. You just spray it off a little bit though. Okay. Just keep that nice and dark. Okay. Now we're going to do the same thing with our deep turquoise. But here's the difference with the deep turquoise. I want you to think of like a natural patina. Where would a patina happen? Where would it occur in nature? If you had a metal rusted piece or something like that, think about that. Think about, okay, if the rain's hitting it and it's dripping down like this, then this is probably where it's going to hit, or you know, this is what it's going to look like. So keep those things in mind, because it will make a difference on how real your dresser looks. And then I also added the original handles on my dresser. I painted them in, I cleaned them really well, I boiled them, cleaned them with a degreaser. I painted them with the Patina Effects paste, the brass, and then I used a little bit of the deep turquoise just in the edges to catch that coppery feel, and it looks like a natural patina on my hardware. See that? So right in the leafy crevices and right in the center of the handle is where I added that. And I really, really like the look of that. But that's totally optional. You don't need to do that. Okay, so now let's add a little bit of our deep turquoise. Okay, I'm going to add just probably a little bit right here. And the deep turquoise is really pretty against these colors. Okay, so I definitely leave those deep turquoise drips. Where I might not leave them with the raspberry beret, I'll leave them more with the deep turquoise because it's just looks really nice. And it looks really nice, especially over the white, because it kind of gives it a little bit more of that green tone. And I really like this drippy, kind of smoky, runny feel. I like that. If you don't like that, you can kind of dab that with a paper towel or just spray a little bit more water and let it go away. That's totally up to you, but I kind of like how that softens the piece up a little bit. Okay. And then this is another thing that I would add below the handles, and I would let drip a little bit below my handles. Okay. So now we're starting to get that color in there. I'm going to add just a tiny bit up here because I kind of like the way that's looking. Okay. All right. Okay. We're done with drippy. That's all the drippy we're going to get. If you want to add a little bit more rust or a rust drip, then use the iron oxide. Put a little bit below your handles and let it spray and let that drip. You're going to get a really cool rusted under the handle look. You can add just a little bit right here on your line between where you start to get color and your base where you have these brush marks, and kind of let a little bit drip, down where you've created this cool brush stroke pattern, because it'll look neat. All right. Okay, so now we are on to our palette knife. You guys ready to palette knife this thing? Okay, palette knife schmear, that's what we are doing. We're going to use 3 colors. Out of the metallics, we are going to use our Mermaid Sparkle. I use this one in every finish. I don't use the purple or the hot pink in this because I don't like that super vibrant addition, but you totally can if you want to. And then we're going to use a little bit of sapphire and a little bit of the copper. Okay, so we'll start with our sapphire. Now I really, really like the sapphire on top of the glass beads. I love the way that it looks. I love that bit of carbon or black behind it with the sapphire just popping. So good. Okay, so you can see it, how I've kind of pulled it in here over our glass beads. It's so nice, very nice. Okay, I'm just going to use a palette knife. I'm going to go right into the lid. And the same thing like we did last night. You don't want a bunch of goopy on it. You want it to be pretty smooth. Okay, and then I'm just going to start up here in this corner and then hit those glass beads. Yeah, the way I originally did it was I mixed this into the glass beads and then I had to distress back, and I like this. This is a much better way. That's why teaching class is a good thing a lot of times, because you learn new things, easier ways yourself too. Okay, so I'm just kind of going over the glass beads. I love this sapphire with it. It's just, I'll pull just a little bit down here, but not much. I mostly want this sapphire to be up here. And then you can see how it looks rusted and aged behind it, but you still have that really intense sapphire color above it. Now let's say, I'm just going to show you this because I think it's helpful. All right, so I had so many glass beads, it just looks like a blob, okay? And I'm fine with it. I don't really mind. But if you get something like that and it bothers you, a really easy, quick fix, just take your water and that will break it up. Okay. There we go. Okay. Then that will kind of break up so it feels a little bit more natural. All right. Okay, after we've added that, I might add just a tiny bit more right here. Okay. Yeah, I do too. I like those glass beads. They're cool. You don't have to use glass bead gel. You could use a little bit of sand. You can use salt wash and just create like a nice bumpy texture as well. So don't feel like you have to. I just really like the way that they reflect and hold the paint and the texture that they give. So, but you can do something different if you want to. Okay, and then we will use a little bit of our copper and then we'll end with our mermaid sparkle. Now, one thing to keep in mind, I said this before, but when you top coat or seal your piece, your colors will darken just a little bit. So keep that in mind as you're going. If you don't want it super, super dark, go a tiny bit on the lighter side. You can even test out a tiny bit of top coat and see what it's going to do. Okay? And like I said, I will do probably a live, and we'll go over top coats and all of the different top coats that you can do with it. And I'll give you some tips and tricks because we've got some funky textures to deal with. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to kind of do the same. I'm just going to kind of lightly go, and I'm going to pull this mostly on the top edge of our little texture. Okay. Because I kind of like it to start to create like a pattern or a line with the copper. You can just go straight over it if you want to, but I kind of like that, creating a shape with it. And if it catches in a spot you didn't expect, just go with it. It's supposed to be that way. Okay, and then I'll just kind of go over more of it with this copper. I'm gonna let it catch where it does. And then I'll pull my palette knife down into our brushed area. Okay. And if you don't like that, like if that bothers you, guess what? And the only reason I'm pointing this out is because I know there's going to be some of you that will not like things like that, and you want to know how to fix it. So you're just going to take your same brush that you're already smoking out with, okay? You're going to put a little bit of paint on it. These are a little bit wet, so they're kind of just blending in. You can blend it like this, okay? Kind of soften it up a little bit. Then I can put a little bit more of that black, and I can kind of just smoke that a little bit, which I'm going to do because that's bothering me. Okay. This is why I said it takes time. Sometimes you kind of go back over it. But if you always keep that in mind, two things in mind. You don't have to go back over all the steps to correct one spot. Just add a little bit of like the smoke over it. See how you feel about it. Maybe that fixes the problem, and then you just have to, really just stipple a tiny bit and just like dry brush a little bit to bring that darkness back in, Let the dark in. Okay? And then if that feels too dark, that's okay. Just take your palette knife now and very carefully go over your textured spots, okay, so that you still have that pop of dimension. All right, see how soft and subtle that is now? So now I'll just take it one more time, hit those areas, and then we'll hit it with the mermaid kiss. But that's how you're going to fix a spot like that if that happens to you. And it probably will. That's just how it goes. But that's okay, because now look at how much more intense the coppers on the beads look. See how much dimension that gives? If you got this shiny intense here and the shiny intense on your texture, you're not going to see that texture the way that you want to. So you want to let some of these areas be a little bit smoky or dull, and then let some of these textured areas just kind of shine. Okay. All right, let's add a little mermaid kiss. Isn't that cool? It just starts to make it feel, okay, like it has texture, like you want to touch it. And I don't know, it's fun. It's something cool to look at and to stare into. That's why I love making furniture like real art. You know, get out of your one color comfort zone and, you know, start painting something that people can just look at for hours and be like, oh, I didn't notice this part before. Like, that's cool. You know, it's so fun. Okay, so we got our mermaid sparkle, this cool blue color from Prima. Hey Shar, how's it going? I'm glad you joined us. Okay, and just a little tiny bit, just like before. Okay, and then you can see where I've added it here and I haven't added it there. See how much more dimension that gives? Okay, so we're going to start here. Okay, I'll take most of it off onto the beads because it's very textured, and then I'll just kind of very lightly pull my brush down like I was showing you, and then I'll just kind of let whatever catches catch on it. Okay, I'm out, so I'm going to do it again. Doesn't want to pick up. I really do like this. You could use, if you don't want this bluish tone on it, I like it, but you could use like a silver. That would be a good contrasting color to your copper there, and it would give you a kind of a similar feel, but it would pull out that blue tone. And then just give you that nice muted tone. Okay, we'll just pull this down just a little bit. Okay, that's plenty, okay? We don't want to overdo it with the mermaid sparkle. You just want to have, see how this has less? This has more. So you can choose which one you like more. This one shows a lot more of the colors, and this one shows more of the mermaid sparkle. But you can see I've done the same steps to get here, minus I added a little bit more smoke back in, and our paint was a little bit wet, so it blended it a little bit more. But you can see how different a finish can look just by doing the steps. So everyone's should be a little bit different. It shouldn't be exactly the same. It should be unique and beautiful and wonderful to you. But this is how I achieved that finish. Now, this is a little more colorful. I feel like if I wanted a little more color to add into this now, I would take some sapphire. I would put it probably like right in here. And then I would put a little bit of native clay in between the two. And then I would probably brush a little bit of like a chocolate over it, pull just a tiny bit of the copper, and then see how I like that. If I wanted, I could just dry brush a tiny bit of black. Okay, so that kind of gives you an idea over all of that. Now, if I want my base darker, like I talked about before, and what I did on my dresser was when I was done with this, I took my carbon and I painted straight over the bottom part. And I painted it solid carbon again, so it didn't have all of this shading and things like that in it. I'll just show you really quick what that looks like, because I think, you know, maybe you'll like that falling down into it like a smooth transition, but maybe you want more of a harsh line. If that's what you want, then we'll just take our carbon and we're going to go right across the bottom here. Okay. Then we've got more definition between our top and our bottom. We can see that better. You can divide this however you want. I mean, you could do this, the top fourth, half and half. I did it basically on my dresser was like the bottom quarter and then the rest of it, okay? All right, so that's our carbon. Then I would probably let that dry a little bit. I'm gonna fudge a little bit. I would put a little bit of this brass patina on it, or I did. This is what I did do, okay? And we're just going to very, very lightly hit the texture. There. Okay, so it still has that copper, but it's got a little bit of pop. I would let it dry totally, and then I took a little bit of my iron oxide, which is a great rust tone, and I just put a little bit around the edges where I think it might catch a little bit of that, and then I sprayed it and let it drip a little. The iron oxide looks really nice against the carbon because it's a nice pretty rust, and you just need a little tiny bit to notice it. So don't do a ton of it, just do a little bit, maybe along the bottom. Just hit your brush, you know, like this along the bottom with the iron oxide, maybe a little bit more than that, and then spray it. And then if your dresser has any details or any little carving things in the bottom, it's going to catch in those and it's going to look really cool when it dries. So don't ever judge it until it's completely dry because it will look different than when you're applying it. Keep that in mind. All right. Okay, so let me show you this one. I'm going to check for any questions, and then I will do a top coating segment. So I'm going to teach the class tomorrow morning, and then I will do another class on top coating and sealing, and I'll give you guys some different options and things like that to go with. All right, so let me show you now our finish. Whoa. Okay. So we've got a little less colorful, a little more colorful, and a little more of the white showing. And here is one of our boards from yesterday. Okay, so see how much more copper this is and how vibrant and fiery this looks, and then how sultry. There's the difference between the two looks. This is a much fiery, intense finish, and this is much more sultry. So I'll probably go back over this, and I might add just like that sapphire and native clay like I said there, and then I might darken up my white just a titch more so it's even across the board. But even if it's not, that would still be a really cool drawer or dresser. So, okay, I must have got dipped paint right onto that somewhere. Look at that, I must have had it on my finger. Now we got a sapphire smudge. Oh well. Oh well, that's part of it. That's just what occurred naturally in nature, and that's part of it. Okay, now we have a smudgy fingerprint. I like it. Okay, so I'm going to check your questions and see if you have any. It is hot in here, and I even have my little fan going. I'm glad you like the texture stuff. The texture really is fun. It's so fun to work with. It's fun to play off of, and you can get so much pop and dimension with a little bit of texture. Yes, Shar, they do have the palette knives at the dollar store. I found them at the dollar store too, and I thought, well, that's really rad. I'm glad you said that because I saw them and I thought about saying something and I forgot. Okay. Well, it looks like I've answered most of them. If you guys have any other questions, don't hesitate to either post them in the group. I don't mind you messaging me. It might take me a minute to get to. And if you can message in the group or post in the group, that's best because there's probably someone else who has a similar question to you. But if that you're nervous, that's okay. You can always message me too. That's totally fine. And yeah. All right, so I will see all of you tomorrow morning. 10 a.m. Mountain Time, so that's 9 if you're on the Pacific, it's noon if you're on the East Coast, and we will be doing our bright matte Raku finishes, and I've decided to teach you two different styles, one that has texture and one that's smooth, and I think that will be really kind of fun to play off of. So, and yes, Lisa, I did get your email. I thought I replied, but I guess I just thought that I replied. Yes, I got it. If any of you want a kit, a Redesign with Prima kit or a Wise Owl kit, I'm going to put in another order so I can get those for you. If you want that, go ahead and email me, and then I can add that on. That way I can send them a few at a time, since they specially poured that up for us. So, all right, I hope you have a wonderful, beautiful evening, and I hope you enjoyed this, and it was fun for me. I've even painted my face. So I'll see you guys in the morning. Have a good night.